next on our program is Amarein Fourie from SST, who's going to be talking about, hi Amarein, who's going to be talking about pollutants in mussels and the ongoing research with Norway. Over to you, Amarein.
Thanks, Tara. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, let me know if you can see it in the right way.
It's coming up now. We can see it and it's in full screen.
Okay, can you see my notes if I do it like this?
No, we can't see any notes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thanks, Tara, for handing over. So just to, I'm talking about here microplastic research at SST. And just to give you a quick overview of microplastics. Sorry, Tara, I think there's a delay on my side. There you go. So microplastics are plastic particles less than 5 millimeters in size, and they consist of plastic pellets, microbeads, plastic fragments, and microfibers. Microplastics can also be divided into two main groups, which are your primary and secondary microplastics. Primary microplastics are particles intentionally made small in size, like your plastic pellets, which are the raw materials for plastic production, as well as microbeads that are used in cosmetics, whereas secondary microplastics originate from the fragmentation and degradation of larger plastic items in the environment. And secondary microplastics is thought to make up the majority of microplastics in the environment just because of the huge plastic load. So microplastics are harmful to the environment. They can exude, absorb, and adsorb various pollutants and chemicals from the environment, and these can be attributed to three main groups of pollutants, such as your plastic ingredients, which are polymers and additives, such as BPA, for example. It also includes the byproducts of the plastic manufacturing process, as well as chemical contaminants already present in the environment or water columns, such as your persistent organic pollutants or POPs and heavy metals. So these are often hydrophobic, which means they're water-fearing and concentrate on plastic particles. And this makes microplastics they can act as vectors of these harmful chemicals and pollutants in the environment, and they contaminate the food web. So because of their small size and high abundance of microplastics in the environment, they're easily accessible to a variety of organisms, such as your filter feeders or mussels at the bottom of the food chain. They are non-selective feeders and can inadvertently consume microplastics and take them up. Microplastics and pollutants can also become human health risks through bioaccumulation. So the organism may bioaccumulate pollutants over time itself, and then it can biomagnify. So it can increase through the transfer of microplastics and the related pollutants from the lower trophic levels to the higher trophic levels, which then can mean it goes from mussels to fish, ultimately ending up in the food that we eat. The plastic loads continue to increase in the environment. These are just some of the examples of local sites. The two beach pictures are Kucha, then Port Elizabeth, and then photo on the right is the Motherwell Canal. So you can see the Motherwell Canal as well is fully packed with plastic, and that feeds directly to the Cyclops River, which then enters the ocean in Algoa Bay. SSD researchers will also be doing sampling at the Kucha Beach soon for the litter monitoring project to get an idea of the litter accumulation rate at that beach. And just to make a note that this beach is sort of isolated from the public. It has restricted access, and you can see the extent of pollution at that beach. Just to tell you a bit more about the microplastic research happening at SST, we were able to set up a sample preparation lab in 2020, which you can see in the photo here. We've got a film hood, a laminate flow cabinet, we've got a freeze dryer, and some various other lab equipment. And then we are doing some plastic-related pollutants and mussels. We have completed that study last year, and we will be moving to fish. Busy with that study. So we were able to use this lab for the first time in August last year when we collected some mussel samples along the Algoa Bay coastline. Here you can see some of the SSD researchers in the field. We collected tuna, brown mussel, it's a local mussel occurring on the south coast. We collected 60 samples per site along 7 sites. So there you can briefly see the bay with the 7 sites indicated. And just to make you know, there's the SWAC observer, so you can see where it enters the bay. And the SWAC observer is a heavily polluted river, not only with plastic, but also from industrial waste and domestic waste as well. So from the field, we took the mussels to the lab. We have to prepare them for a freeze drying process. So freeze drying removes all the moisture from the samples, which allows them for long-term storage and to limit the contamination of the samples when we need to send them to the labs to be analyzed. So once we get to the field, we remove the mussels from the shells, so they get placed into an individual tube, as you can see in the photo. We place them into the freezer to be frozen solid. Once from the freezer, we take off the lid and put a piece of foil over, poke a hole, which allows the moisture to escape during the freeze drying process. So there you can see how it looks like in the freeze dryer. So once it's fully dried, it becomes sort of powdery, and then we're able to homogenize them and pack them nicely, as you can see in the last photo there, in little tubes, which we then send over to the labs. And also just make a note here of the hard work, or preparation what goes into all of the equipment that you sort of see here, the tubes and the bags and the lids have to be acid washed and rinsed with deionized water in order to prevent the contamination of samples, because we're working with pollutants. That's just the important fact to keep in mind. And also we worked underneath the laminar flow cabinet, which allows the samples to be protected from particles that may be floating in the air and blowing clean filtered air towards the researcher to make sure that we don't get any contaminants in the samples. So some of these samples were then sent to NTNU. We have a collaboration with them where we tested the mussels for plastic-related chemicals, such as bisphenols like BPA, BPS, and BPF. This is just to name a few. So obviously BPA is well known. What is less well known is that BPS and BPF are often used as substitutes for BPA in plastic items. So BPS is also commonly found in dyes and tanning agents, while BPF is used in items that require a thicker plastic and durability. Your benzophenone filters are added to plastics to prevent the degradation through sunlight, and they're also added in personal care products like sunblock or sunscreen. So like I mentioned, all of these plastic-grade chemicals added to plastics to obtain the various desired properties of plastic, so they in can lines, personal care products, but it's also well known that these can induce endocrine disrupting effects, which lead to adverse health effects on humans. So we sent the mussels over to NTNU, and they were analyzed using LCMS, which is liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, which just means it's a fancy machine that's able to detect, confirm, and quantify the amount of the concentration of these chemicals in the mussels. And this is just to give you a quick sneak peek of the results that we found. We currently have a paper under review with the Journal of the Science of the Total Environment, with Alex from NTNU and some of our collaborators on that side, where you can see some of the benzophenones on the top graph, as well as the bisphenols on the bottom graph. So just for interest sake, for example, site 1 was located closest to Swartkorps, and you can really see there was a peak at that site for benzophenone 1 as well as BPA. We also have another source, a wastewater outlet of close to site 4. You can also see the peak in bisphenol over there. And just to make a note as well, so although we're looking at the pollutants, but microplastics are not exclusively the source of these pollutants. Like I mentioned, that there are various other sources of these pollutants in the environment. I'll touch back onto this just now. So like I mentioned, we've got a paper under review. So we've got some novel discoveries as well. So keep an eye out for when we have this published. Then we also have another collaboration with Northwestern University in South Africa, where we also sent some of the same mussels for heavy metal analysis, where we found, this is for example, tin, chromium, and copper in the mussels. And we also will be looking into microplastic counts with the university. Like I said, just to give us a better insight on the potential sources of these chemicals in the mussels, And yeah, so be able to determine the presence of microplastics in mussels itself, and to just, yeah, like I said, give us a better understanding what's happening with plastic pollution in the bay and the potential sources, because it is a big and wide field. So we have some exciting research happening at SST at the moment. So that is it from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amarein.
Any questions?
Thanks, Amarein. That's great to hear about all the research that's happening there and the collaborations that are happening with NTNU and South Africa and a number of universities and institutions there. There has been a question in the chat. I'm not sure, Amarein, if you want to expand on this. It's not specifically for microplastics, but there was a question that says, while the focus is on marine water and plastic pollution, is it possible to include inland water bodies such as Lake Victoria? It's as that is also getting polluted with a lot of plastic. Sorry, Amarein, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, we obviously can do all of these studies in any water body. You will be able to detect pollutants and quantify if there's pollutants in the sediment in the water, as well as the biota or that can be found in water bodies. So yes, it is possible.
Thanks, Amarein. Yeah, and I would say in general, with regard to plastic pollution in fresh bodies of fresh water as well, I think it still poses this, perhaps not quite to the same extent, but certainly a good overlap with the threats that ocean plastic presents. Perhaps, yeah, I would imagine that it would be a lower energy environment, but yeah, obviously still the same impacts of plastic pollution entering the environment would apply in that situation as well.
So depending also on the sources, there might be various sources as well. People might be dumping things in there, depends, but yes.